Everyone says they want peace, not war. Leaders hesitate to even utter Article 5. Yet the entire world is quietly preparing for conflict. What are we truly witnessing? Russian drones strike near NATO. European nations scramble jets and train civilians. The US moves F-35s. Australia builds nuclear subyards. Pieces are sliding into place like chessmen before the opening move. If everyone wants peace, what are they not telling us? In the past 48 hours, the world edged closer. Dozens of Russian drones crossed into Polish airspace. One struck a residential building. Poland triggered NATO's Article 4, urgent consultations for threatened security. Meanwhile, Romania confirmed a drone breach. Russia tested its Zircon hypersonic missiles. Ukraine launched drone attacks on a major Russian oil refinery, igniting fires. Far from Europe, other pieces are moving. US F-35s to Puerto Rico. China warns the Philippines. North Korea threatens retaliation. Australia announced an $8 billion investment to expand a nuclear-powered submarine shipyard, extending US Navy reach across the Indo-Pacific. These are not speeches or theories. These are real moves on the global chessboard. We analyze actions, not just words. While leaders speak of avoiding war, their actions tell another story. A hidden narrative of intent and preparation unfolds. We'll examine Europe fortifying its defenses and Russia escalating its shows of force. Then, how other flashpoints are heating up from the Middle East to the Pacific. We'll see how the US is repositioning its military, and even far away Australia is preparing for conflict. Finally, we'll ask the question no one wants to ask aloud. Are these steps meant to prevent war or quietly lay its groundwork? Before we dive in, subscribe. We'll track these critical moves shaping the next global crisis in coming weeks. Europe is moving like a continent that smells smoke before the fire. The scent of conflict hangs heavy. Reuters reports Poland scrambled fighter jets, shut Lublin airport, and deployed air defense batteries along its eastern frontier. This followed dozens of Russian drones crossing its airspace during strikes on Ukraine. One drone slammed into a Polish residential building. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk stated, "Poland is at its closest point to open conflict since the Second World War. This is more than politics." In neighboring Romania, Sky News reports the military scrambled MiG-21 fighters after another Russian drone violated its airspace. Second incident in weeks. NATO is quietly reinforcing its eastern flank. AP News states more air defense systems are deploying to Poland and Baltic states. The Drive reports NATO fighter squadrons have increased patrol tempo and alert status. Readiness cycles are shortening. Even civilian airspace is adapting. Reuters highlights European civil aviation authorities reviewing flight corridors to avoid risk zones. None of this is officially war preparation, but the pattern is clear. Governments are moving pieces as if expecting escalation, publicly denying it. Analysts at The Guardian call this the shadow posture. Defensive measures framed as routine, signaling rising fear behind the scenes. Here's the critical point for American viewers. Poland is not distant. It's a NATO member. Under treaty, an attack obligates U.S. response. Every radar battery in Poland is a line of deterrence Washington is now tied to defend. If Europe moves this fast, how long before the U.S. is pulled further in? Not by choice, but by treaty. While Europe scrambles, Moscow does the opposite. It's turning up the heat, escalating tensions deliberately. Reuters reports, Russia just test-fired a Zircon hypersonic missile during drills in the Barents Sea. It travels at Mach 9. This makes it almost impossible to intercept with current NATO missile defenses. Not a battlefield necessity, but a clear message. A message that Russia can reach anywhere, fast and without warning. A demonstration of undeniable power. Russian strategic bombers fly over the Arctic and Barents region, escorted by fighter jets. These flights are not random. The Guardian reports these are part of long-range nuclear strike exercises, revived due to NATO's growing border presence. They don't fire weapons, but they cross radar lines, trigger NATO air patrols, forcing Western militaries to burn readiness cycles. Every scramble, every alert costs money and stretches resources. It's a war of attrition without bullets. On the ground, the war in Ukraine is used as a stage for escalation. The logic becomes dangerously clear. Reuters says Ukrainian forces recently struck a major Russian oil refinery deep inside Russian territory, sparking massive fires. Russia intensified missile barrages against Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Moscow shows any move against it comes with a high price. Analysts call this threat diplomacy, shaping an enemy's choices, not with words, but with fear of the cost of their actions. For NATO, this is a calculated trap. Move forces east, Russia claims encirclement. Hold back, Moscow claims weakness. Either choice feeds the Kremlin's narrative. This is no longer about territory, but who controls perception. If Russia keeps raising resistance costs, how long before caution turns into paralysis? The stakes are climbing. While eyes fix on Eastern Europe, other flashpoints quietly heat up. Each one a lit fuse, waiting to spark. Reuters reports, US F-35 fighter jets deployed to Puerto Rico, a visible show of force amid rising tensions with Venezuela. Washington calls it deterrence, but Caracas calls it hostile, accusing the U.S. of preparing for intervention. American pilots now sit minutes away from contested airspace. One miscalculation could trigger a chain reaction. Across the Pacific, China issued sharp warnings to the Philippines over provocations in the South China Sea. Reuters reports, Chinese military spokesman warned further. Philippine patrols near disputed reefs could lead to unpredictable consequences. The South China Sea is a global shipping artery. A small clash here could shock global markets overnight. North Korea is raising the temperature. Kim Jong-un's sister warned the U.S. and South Korea against joint military drills, calling them a rehearsal for invasion. Pyongyang hints it might review its nuclear policy, signaling new missile tests. Every time North Korea rattles its nuclear saber, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command shifts resources, moving ships and aircraft from elsewhere. In the Middle East, the shock is real. Al Jazeera reports Israel carried out strikes in Doha, Qatar, targeting Hamas leadership. Qatar hosts the largest U.S. airbase in the region. Striking there crosses a diplomatic red line, risking wider confrontation. Individually, these seem separate. Together, they form the tinderbox effect. Each crisis stretches U.S. attention and forces. The more fronts to manage, the thinner deterrence becomes everywhere. The world's safety margin shrinks. If a spark ignites in one of these places, how long before the flames leap across the map? A dangerous interconnectedness. While allies brace and adversaries posture, Washington quietly shifts its own pieces across the global board. US F-35s landed in Puerto Rico, officially deterrence. But stationing 5th-gen stealth aircraft this close to South America gives the Pentagon rapid strike options. A reminder that while Europe dominates headlines, the U.S. watches other potential flashpoints and moves to preempt them. In Europe, the American footprint is expanding. U.S. increased rotational deployments in Poland and the Baltics, sending more air defense systems, armored units, and logistics teams to reinforce NATO's eastern flank. These aren't symbolic. Real families watch loved ones pack for a front line that feels far away until you remember it's a NATO border. The Pentagon calls it deterrence. For thousands of American households, it feels like the early rumble of mobilization. The U.S. is also turning up pressure inside NATO. Trump urged allies to halt purchases of Russian oil entirely, warning that buying energy from Moscow funds the war machine. A stark choice with global implications. Cutting Russian oil sounds clean, but would send energy prices soaring across Europe and ripple back to American markets. Behind visible moves, the cyber front shifts. Defense One reports White House Cyber Office warning of increasing Russian hacking attempts, calling for a whole-of-nation effort to harden critical infrastructure. Power grids, financial networks, hospitals are on high alert. A war in Europe wouldn't stay confined there. A cyber attack could hit your town as easily as any battlefield. Most telling is America's industrial base. Reuters reports expanding production lines for missiles, artillery shells, even nuclear submarine components. Not emergency wartime mobilization, but preparation for possibility. Factories adding shifts, hiring welders, securing rare materials. It may not make evening news, but it's how a nation quietly sets its chessboard before the clock starts. The question: are these moves meant to prevent war or to ensure America is the first one ready when it begins? While Europe consumes headlines, another front quietly takes shape thousands of miles away. Reuters reports Australia announced an $8 billion investment to expand a nuclear-powered submarine shipyard in Western Australia. These are nuclear-propelled, not armed. They can stay submerged for months, travel vast distances, and operate silently. For the U.S., they're not just ships. They're moving pieces in a long game of power projection across the Indo-Pacific. This is part of the AUKUS Pact, linking Australia, the UK, and the US. Washington will transfer technology and submarines. CNN reports the shipyard expansion is the physical backbone. It creates a silent wall, a hidden deterrent against Chinese naval expansion. Understand why this matters. While Russia presses Europe, China builds artificial islands, militarizing reefs, warning neighbors. Just this week, Reuters reports Beijing's military warned Manila against provocations in the South China Sea. In this climate, long-range nuclear-powered submarines are not just weapons. They are insurance. They appear anywhere, undetected. That uncertainty forces China to think twice before pushing too far. A psychological edge in the silent war. By anchoring this shipyard, the U.S. creates a second strategic pole. The twin hemisphere posture, as analysts call it. If conflict erupts in Europe, Pacific forces deter China. If Asia ignites, Europe holds firm. It's about splitting risk. While leaders talk avoiding escalation, they build infrastructure to fight on multiple fronts if escalation happens anyway. The Australian shipyard isn't just construction. It's a warning, silent but visible. The U.S. prepares for conflict from multiple directions. Each move, isolated, feels prudent. Poland scrambles jets. Russia fires Zircon. U.S. parks F-35s. Australia builds subs. None presented as war prep. Framed as routine, deterrence. Yet together, they form a pattern. A slow tightening of the net. This is the fog of preparation. The more you prepare to prevent war, the more preparations read as prelude. Deterrence becomes a mirror. Every reinforcement reflected as intent. Every exercise read as rehearsal. That mirror creates the deterrence spiral, a cycle where restraint and readiness blur until a single mistake looks like a deliberate strike. The margin for error vanishes. Reuters reports Poland calls this closest to open conflict since World War II, not rhetoric. Decision time would be hours, not weeks. If one drone kills the wrong person in the wrong place, the spring could snap. Are leaders creating a safety margin? Or winding the spring so tight that one more turn will snap it? If everyone swears they want peace, why do their actions look like pressure, not relief? The paradox deepens. What if governments are preparing to fight a war while telling us they are trying to avoid it? The unspoken truth. First comes the planning, then the deployments, then comes the silence. And in that silence, risk rose. Let's pull the threads together. In Europe, The pattern is unmistakable. Scrambled jets, Russian drones, NATO air defenses shifting east. Russia raises stakes, firing Zircon missiles, flying bombers over the Barents Sea, striking deep into Ukraine's infrastructure. Beyond Europe, flashpoints erupt. F-35s to Venezuela. China warns Philippines. North Korea threatens tests. Israel strikes Doha. The U.S. quietly moves pieces, backing Poland, pressing NATO, ramping cyber defenses, investing in industry. Australia commits $8 billion for a new subyard. Separately, these are defensive. Together, they trace the outline of preparation. This is observation, not prediction. The world shifts into a posture less like crisis management, more like quiet mobilization. The question is no longer if there are signs. It's how close these signs are to forming a straight line toward confrontation. Are world leaders quietly building conditions that will make war unavoidable, even if none truly want it? History shows great conflicts rarely begin with a single decision. They begin with a chain of preparations, each justified as caution, defended as deterrence, until deterrence and preparation become indistinguishable. NATO seeks stability, yet forces shift east. Russia defends interests, yet tests missiles. Every government claims peace, but acts like war. That's where the danger lives. When everyone prepares for a conflict no one officially wants, they can create the very storm they fear. Have we already crossed the invisible line where preparation stops preventing war and starts making it inevitable? If valuable, subscribe and like. Join the conversation in comments. We want your thoughts. Are leaders truly trying to prevent war or secretly preparing for one? Your perspective matters. Understanding the present is the first step to shaping the future. Stay informed, stay vigilant.